Hello there. My name is Wanda Hopkins. I'm the CEO of the Future Hopkins Risk Consultant Firm and a graduate student at Wake Forest University School of Professional Studies. I'm currently enrolled in the Master's Enterprise Risk Management program, and I really appreciate you having me here today to share with you how my consulting firm will specialize in enterprise risk management and how I can help you further leverage ERM here at Wake Forest University. Let me introduce you to several ERM tools and examples specifically selected for Wake Forest University. The first tool we'll look at is called the risk register. A risk register is used to identify, assess, and manage risks that can impact an organization, and it begins with identifying the mission, vision, and values, along with goals of an organization. As you can see on this slide, I took a deep dive into all those areas at Wake Forest University using the university's framework, and I leaned into the goals and objectives at Wake Forest University when I was preparing to complete the risk register, such as Wake Forest will be a lifelong learning community that calls all to develop their full potential to contribute to a diverse and complex world. Also, Wake Forest will build meaningful mutual partnerships to honor our commitment to the well-being of our local, regional, and global communities. Using the risk registered, I consider risks at Wake Forest University as it relates to financial, legal, reputational, and operational risks. The three risks you see on the screen are categorized by financial, legal, regulatory, reputational. There was a fourth risk that I identified in the category of operational risk, which is not on this slide for time's sake, but should you be interested in hiring my firm, I will be happy to go further into the operational risk category with you as well. And the risk I did look at in my studies was student health as it relates to operational risk. But I decided to highlight the three on the screen because of the relationship they have with one another. I think it's easy to see how one risk can be pinned back to all three of these particular risk categories. Although I did select the three different risks, again, we could discuss how each risk can fit into other categories should you decide to hire my firm in the future. But for illustration purposes today, let's use for financial risks, let's use the example of student housing. I'll talk about the risk description, causes, and sample control measures that could be put into place for that risk. And should we work together on this in the future, we can look at more consequences and action plans, all of which are part of the risk register. So, for financial, student housing to support student life activities and accessibility to campus in the pursuit of educational goals for student success. That was the identified risk, and the description of that is while maintaining facility, housing standards, and accessibility for all students. The changes in frequency and complexity of structural work, along with the cost and availability of building materials, could alter the budget unexpectedly and deplete funds rapidly. What could cause this would be such things as routine maintenance, unexpected repairs, deferred maintenance, damage caused by students and student organizations, natural disasters. The list goes on and on. Um, some example controls you could put in place for this student housing financial risk include strategic maintenance plans and schedule, partnerships with contractors and building supply companies to look at the supply chain um, controls and methods to make sure there are no issues with the supply chain, frequent inventory assessment, routine inspections, and there's more. Again, I'll be happy to go into more depth at a later time. But to highlight another risk under the legal regulatory category, I want to give the example of student travel to ensure students' accessibility and safety during study on campus and abroad in pursuit of understanding problems facing society, which aligns back to the mission and values and goals of the university. The description for this risk is while planning and implementing student activities involving travel, including study abroad programs that can help students experience and engage with other cultures, failure to meet ADA requirements to ensure accessibility for differently abled students, and/or illegal acts by students or faculty could result in lawsuits and other legal ramifications for the university, which that can be even more involved and complex if they occur on during study abroad programs in foreign countries. Causes can be such things as complex international laws and regulations, multiple regulatory bodies with complex systems, involve policies and procedures. That's just a few of the causes. Some example controls that we could put in place are appropriate number of staff to manage transportation services and study abroad programs, analyze insurance needs and maintain appropriate insurance coverage, and initial and continuing staff training on transportation and study abroad programs. The last risk we'll highlight from the risk register today is reputational, and the example I used was student activism to allow for excuse me, free expression in excuse me. Hmm. I do apologize for that interruption. I had to get a sip of water. But again, student activism to allow for free expression in pursuit of experiential learning and personal development. That was my example for reputational risk. And the description is while preparing and overseeing student activities on campus and monitoring those of students off campus tied to the university, consideration of the implications of students demonstrating their freedom of speech and expression in a manner perceived negatively must be taken seriously as it relates to threats to the standing of the university and the larger society. Students participating in activism while representing the university off campus in a less structured environment could especially damage the reputation of the university. Such causes may include culture and leadership of student groups, current events, frequency, and structure of university-sponsored student events. And some control examples for that risk would be frequent communication with students via social media and internal communication systems, include a university position statement under the guidance of attorneys in the student handbook regarding student activism, outline clear expectations for student behavior during university-sponsored events. And one in particular that I'm fond of is regular meetings with student body leaders. So those are all the examples of risks from the risk register. Another tool that I wanted to show you today was the risk matrix. Using the previous risks that we discussed as examples, I've used what we call a risk matrix to quantify the impact of the risk to Wake Forest University based on the likelihood of occurrence multiplied by the impact of the university's operations. As you can see, the highest rating On this example is number 9, the legal regulatory, which was the study abroad risk that had the highest risk rating of 9. The scores can range from 1 to 5 for both likelihood and consequence, with 1 being the least and 5 being the most. There was a possibility that the student travel, legal regulatory risk I described would occur. And so it rated a 3 for likelihood, and a 3 means it is expected to occur in some circumstances. And it had a moderate impact on operations, which is also a 3, and that is defined as there would be some disruption of services, the potential for adverse publicity, complaints possible, and litigation possible. But after controls were applied, the risk matrix can be reassessed. So it's an ongoing tool that you can project expected outcomes and then also reassess to monitor the controls and their effectiveness. So working together, we can lessen the potential impacts of risk associated with the financial risk of student housing. As you can see, student housing, the financial scored an 8 on the risk matrix. We can lessen the risk of student travel. Again, the legal regulatory risk, a rating of 9. And decreasing the impacts of negative student activism, which is in the reputational category, and that received a rating of 4 on the risk matrix. The work we do to integrate enterprise risk management will reduce financial and legal liability for the university with these 3 risk examples, and also not only mitigate reputational risks, but actually take advantage of operational risks that can boost the reputation of the university. The next tool I wanted to talk about was the risk assessment worksheet. Using the example of risk related to student travel under the legal regulatory category, I took the risk analysis a step further by utilizing a risk assessment worksheet. On the worksheet, we define or describe the event, and this event is a study abroad program for students enrolled at Wake Forest University in either art or creative writing and or completing an internship. It's located in Ireland. It's scheduled for spring semester 2026, and it's open to students with a GPA of 3.0 or higher. I identified 4 specific risks and their consequences related to the study abroad program on the risk assessment worksheet, and I rated them low, medium, or high using the probability and severity of occurrences. For each risk, 1 or more control measure was designed for implementation, and a revised risk level was anticipated to meet an ordinarily acceptable risk tolerance, which is being assumed by the university until such time future work is contracted. As an example, using the risk rated as H or high, a control measure would be implemented to require faculty, staff, and students to purchase travel insurance offered by the university or an equal and equivalent policy from a third-party vendor. Proof of insurance and identification would be required to be on person during all outings, and a wallet-sized card with emergency contact numbers on their person during travel away from the university. So that is an example of how you start with the risk matrix and complete the risk register, then the risk matrix, and then we take a deeper dive into those risks through the risk assessment worksheet. And um, the last item I'd like to discuss for today's presentation is just our 2 tools that can assist the university's ERM efforts. I wanted to highlight 2 frameworks that can help mitigate risk, especially as it relates to legal and reputational risks. And we will continue with the example of the risk related to student travel. One of the frameworks is called the NIST Risk Management Framework. It includes a seven-step process. It's used by the government. It can be adapted and applied to other organizations. The seven steps are prepare, categorize, select, implement, assess, authorize, and monitor. If you were to apply those steps, it may look something like this. The study abroad program aligns with the mission and priorities of the university and have historically been implemented within the risk appetite of the university as identified during the prior risk assessment and risk matrix completion. Cybersecurity risks for travel abroad were not previously included in the risk management process. Therefore, the NIST risk management framework is being utilized. The second step would be managers work with the university IT and communications departments to identify current and unmet cybersecurity needs as it relates to travel. Managers work with the legal department to determine if unmet needs exceed the university's risk tolerance. Managers gather guidance from IT regarding solutions for risks that need to be treated. University IT staff implement agreed upon risk. Risk registers are updated by managers and reviewed with stakeholders, including legal department representatives. Testing occurs and feedback is obtained from staff and students during study abroad programs. And finally, testing results, feedback, and analysis by IT are shared with managers and legal counsel, and the risk register and profile is updated collaboratively while identifying adjustments needed for risk strategies. And the second framework I wanted to mention that could be utilized by our agency should we work together is the SPIRIT framework. And that specifically is intended for use with reputational risks, and it considers 16 attributes across four categories, including experience with actions such as communications, influence of media, behavior of stakeholders, and feelings toward a business such as trust and goodwill. I want to thank you for letting me share information about my future consultation firm. My recommendation for you today at Wake Forest University is to review the information provided and consider how it may differ or enhance your current ERM efforts, and then act. Don't wait, but start somewhere on raising the bar and realizing how you can use risks to gain a business edge and attract students. I have provided a concrete plan for assessing risk-related study abroad programs, and I hope you will take advantage of this opportunity. I look forward to working with you all in the future. Thank you.